to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
I'm Ann Northrup, and look at the red and blue and white set behind us. Amazing.
It's like being on MSNBC or something. And I guess you could say...
LGBT TV.
I guess you could say that the USA has never been gayer than in this election. They like us.
I don't know. I think
they really like us.
I think the 18th century was pretty gay.
Well,
look, we're happy. I thought about
I don't remember the 18th century.
I thought I might just sit here for an hour and go, wow, as half
I got a lot of wows. I got a lot of
yeah.
emails that just said wows.
Yep.
There were a lot of, we're going to talk about it, the election.
We'll talk about all the details.
Who won? No, but there were a lot of...
What race are you talking about?
There were a lot of wonderful surprises. Not surprises, but gratifying things that happened. And that's what we're going to talk about.
I would say that overall, the sweep of this, the range of our wins in not just LGBT, but progressives and Democrats across the board was really thrilling on a lot of bases.
I will throw a lot of cold water on some of that when we get to, especially when we get to talking about the House and we get to talking about what people focus on when they vote. Yes, this was a wonderful turnout in the presidential election. It's wonderful that Obama was reelected, and we're going to tell you why, even though he does. And it was wonderful to hold on to the Senate for the Democrats and to elect all these LGB people anyway, maybe some T's we don't know about. And so we're going to talk about all that. But what
I'll start, though, with an apology from last week to get that out of the way, because I heard from a viewer who was not happy. She's from Kentucky, and she pointed out that I made a stereotypical slur against rural Kentucky. And she's right. It was a lazy, silly, easy thing to do, and I regret it. And I knew at the time that it was coming out of my mouth. You're not saying the right thing, but I didn't take it back then, but I apologize for it now. So.
Okay.
But I wish Kentucky were voting for more Democrats.
Well, I mean,
too.
we may make some more of these slip-ups today because we didn't get very much sleep, and we're taping on Wednesday afternoon after being up most of the night and then staying up, on our computers all day trying to catch up with what happened around the country. A lot of which you know, but we're going to try to give it context, et cetera.
And a few nuances here and there. And I think we should start with the summary of the known LGBT or LGB vote. And there is some exit polling which indicates...
and exit polling, you must remember, is much more accurate than the actual vote. Because we don't know what happens in those black boxes where people vote. But the exit polling is usually pretty accurate.
Well, we're not. There's no way of looking at the actual vote to see who's voting.
Yes.
But the exit polling does survey people, and they have for some years surveyed LGB voters. They don't ask about trans voters because of consistency, and that became a small issue before the election.
And we can get into this issue of identification. Obviously, a lot of people who are LG or B don't identify, but we also learned that a lot of people who are transgendered also don't want to identify that way publicly or to a pollster because they want to identify as the gender that they're living in.
But over the years, what has happened is that the identifiable, out, willing to talk about it, LGB, lesbian, gay, and bisexual vote has gradually increased.
We've seen it at 2%, 3%, and now it's up to 5% of...
Nationally.
Yeah.
Like in New York City, it's like 8 or 9%, but nationally, 5% is a, here's a really tacky comment in the context of the storms, high watermark for lesbian, gay, bisexual out voters.
And of course, if everybody who had bisexual feelings, I think, was honest, you know,
well,
it
then
would
we'd be talking about 90% of the vote. But in terms of these exit polls and people being asked to identify themselves, 5% of the electorate is now willing to identify itself as lesbian, gay, or bisexual.
And of those who identified, 77% voted for Obama. That is up for a Democratic candidate for president. I think he earned it. And I think Romney certainly repelled people.
One has only to wonder what the 23% who didn't vote for Obama were thinking. Not that I grew up in a Republican household. I understand
Me too.
that. Many of us did.
Where was that?
Many suburbs. Yes. But given specifically the issues and the record, I'm not surprised that 77% voted for Obama.
And I want to apologize to the memory of my dear mother, because she did vote for Adlai Stevenson and Jack Kennedy before she fell into the Republican ranks.
Not mine.
Well, anyway, so Obama, wow. That's a wow. It's a big wow. It was a brilliant win.
It was a relentless, disciplined campaign that started probably in 2006 and has never stopped. And he built this win on some very specific building blocks. Latinos, gracias is my one-word statement on this election. That was the DREAM Act. Women's reproductive rights.
And women's equal pay.
Absolutely, but I think reproductive rights were the bigger, more recent issue. The auto bailout to get manufacturing workers, and same-sex marriage became...
To energize the base.
Exactly.
To show, I know you don't think I'm that liberal, but I'm going to show you that I can take a chance on something.
Clearly, it was a positive, and it was a positive among us, but it was a positive across the board. More on that when we get to the marriage referenda. But this was a very heartfelt, I'm sure, and smart series of building blocks on which he built a concrete base. And the Republicans were flailing about and making empty promises, and they had nothing for people to rely on.
They had never had a more gruesome cast of characters running for the Republican nomination in the history of the United States.
Exactly.
So they were all trying to, so Romney was stuck, and he did it, pandering to this complete right wing of his party, and then he couldn't get back. He didn't even try to get back to the center initially. And then when he did it the last minute, nobody believed it.
Oh, well, it was completely insincere. And someone said to me today, why did they nominate Romney? He was such a loser. And I said, did you look at what the other alternatives were? They just could not get out of their own way in who they were nominating.
We didn't beat Michelle Bachmann, and we didn't...
Oh, please, comic relief remains in the House, and she is there as a constant reminder to us of how bad things can be if you go in that direction.
And a very powerful congressman is left who did not lose his seat, and that's Paul Ryan, who was the vice presidential nominee.
Oh, no, he's back. He won his seat.
No, I'm saying I meant to say he is there.
Yeah.
They've kept that voice. He is a very powerful...
Also...
I told you I was going to make mistakes today.
His
name is Paul Ryan, right?
Why I'm here, yes.
We didn't see much of him in the last couple of weeks of the campaign. I had kind of forgotten about him.
Yeah, the other wacko who's still there is Steve King, the congressman from Iowa.
Yeah.
Who's a real right-winger. But we did get rid of Joe Walsh in Illinois, who, when we look at the real right-wing crazies.
This is the guy who shouted at the president during the State of the Union. Wasn't he Uli? Was not Joe Walsh?
I don't know. Was it?
Maybe not. No,
I've forgotten who did that, but he could have, and he was beaten by Tammy Duckworth, who should have gotten 95% of the vote.
Who was wonderful.
Absolutely wonderful. So
all the Tammys are wonderful.
We hope we've gotten rid of Alan West in Florida.
This is the African-American Republican who said that 70 members of the House are communists.
And he has the list, but he's not releasing it.
I wish. I would love to see it.
But
my comrades.
He's in a recount as we tape, so we're not.
But before we move on to just getting through all these races, I mean, why were we thrilled that Obama won?
Yeah, let's go through that.
People, we need, even though he's got a recalcitrant Republican House.
And I don't think it's going to get any better, by the way.
I think if anything, it's going to get worse because they're so furious. But we'll see what the public makes them do, but it's going to be difficult, mainly because they've all signed this pledge from Grover Norquist that they will never raise a tax, any tax for the rest of their lives. And that puts them in a box, and they're afraid of crossing him because he'll give them a primary and get rid of them. And how do you negotiate about that? Anyway, Obama.
The stalemate has not been broken.
Having the president on the side of our people is so important, and we weren't going to have that with Romney. Having the Department of Justice, being a Department of Justice, and being on our side in all these cases, that's going to help facilitate these cases before the United States Supreme Court.
Exactly.
Obama coming out for same-sex marriage, of course, helped in the marriage referenda that we won. We're going to talk about those.
Having a Democratic president to appoint members of the Supreme Court. You know, we could have lost 2 or 3 seats on the Supreme Court with Romney in office.
Not just the Supreme Court, but every federal court, and those are lifetime appointments, and we're going to get to be doing them for 4 years. And Obama is way behind in making his appointments. There are an awful lot of vacancies. That's why I am advocating, I'm not going to try to take us off track too much, that they seriously consider in the Senate for this period finally changing their rules. The first day that they meet, they're allowed to change the rules of how they operate. And they have a rule now that says, well, if somebody starts filibustering, we'll just have a vote called cloture, where you have to get 60 votes. And if you get 60 votes, you close debate. That means you need 60 votes on everything. According to this Republican Congress.
Because we're not forcing them to actually hold filibusters.
Because the Republicans are in the minority in the Senate, and they just filibuster everything, and you have a cloture vote. But they could change.
Not enough of a minority.
They could change that on the first day and say majority rules. Imagine that, folks. Majority rules.
Well, that's also one of these be careful what you vote for situations.
We would lose our power as a minority then to thwart the Republican majority. But you know what? Things would start moving along and things would happen. And I'm for that. I am for that.
Well, Angus King, who won the Senate seat in Maine as an independent, that's his top priority, is breaking this logjam in the Senate and changing the rules. So
and the President of the United States, of course, no matter how bad the Republicans are, can block their worst excesses. He has veto power, and so we're not worried about losing Obamacare. Of course, what we would like to get is a stronger health care law.
I think we now have chances of doing some improvements to the new health care law, which doesn't go into effect till next year anyway.
Right.
So I think there are some chances to improve it as we go along, nuanced little changes here and there. We also now can focus on things like the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, or, heaven forbid, an actual overall equality bill, which many people are claiming is what we really need.
All right, but that is a legislative action. That's not something the president can do. I was trying to stick with the president, and so let me get into.
But he sponsors legislation, I'm
not going to pass it. This House is not going to allow it to the floor.
Well, people said that about Obamacare, too, but he managed...
Yeah, but there was a Democratic majority then.
I'm just saying, there's more... Why, if you go down the list of why we're happy Obama was elected, the possibility starts to come into view.
Is it possible that you were sitting there watching television, watching the election results and saying, oh, Obama won and we won the Senate, why aren't we winning the House?
No, I don't think there's any possibility of that.
People don't understand that? Why?
No.
Well, I don't think people understand it, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because I showed up at my polling place, and it's jammed in New York, where we have Soviet-style ballots. There's very little to vote for. All the choices have been made for us by the party beforehand, and
I was part of that.
Yet people showed up, and they knew that New York was going to go for Obama anyway, but they wanted to vote. They all stood online for a long time to vote, which is also a disgrace, although it was not as bad in New York as it was in these other 8 hours. That is unconstitutional.
Florida,
So
treasonous.
But the point is, but when I showed up at 2010 to vote in the off-year elections, nobody was there. Nobody was there. The places were empty, and that's when the Republicans retook power. And the other thing that was going on, folks, is that the Koch brothers and all the plutocrats bought up, they used their money wisely, So they bought up these state legislatures around the country. They have over 30 governors now. They have most of the state legislatures, and they draw the congressional lines. Let me say that again. They draw the lines. And if you draw the lines and you can't win, you're an idiot.
Well, I'm happy to say they wasted a lot of money in this campaign.
And we can talk about that. So all I'm saying, folks, is your vote is more powerful focusing on your state legislature, focusing on House races in your state. But we may have lost the House for the next 10 years. So that's the penalty for not paying attention to those races. End of sermon. But when you talk about money, you're right.
Oh, wait, silver lining on the House, we did win 6 more. The Democrats won back 6 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. We're still, 35 seats behind. But traditionally, in presidential re-election campaigns, the ruling party, the party in power in the presidency, wins an average of 2 seats. So we have won 6 to 8. So that's...
How many do we traditionally win in the next election for a second-term president?
Well, we'll see whether people are energized and empowered. And, you say people came out to vote. I have never, in all my years, my 40-odd years of voting, seen a crowd like that in my polling place. Never. Never.
I have. When Mondale ran against Reagan, I was in the Village, and believe me, they were lined up out the door.
Never.
And the other thing they did, I'm going to recall this election, everybody hated Reagan so much that this is the Village, where there are a lot of commies. They all voted for Mondale when I looked at the machine because they were so scared of him getting another term. But Reagan won New York that year. Over Mondale.
He won everything.
Well, he didn't win everything. I mean, Mondale won a couple of states. Minnesota.
Well.
He won more than George McGovern did.
Romney didn't win Massachusetts, and Ryan didn't win Wisconsin.
Yeah, that was sweet. But let's get to the really good. Well, and wait a minute. In terms of Obama, also. He's going to continue to be much easier on gay partners until we win full rights.
Yes. Look for ways to give benefits to same-sex partners.
He's going to do more executive orders that are going to help us. And Romney knew this was going to happen, that the economy was pent up and that jobs were going to start flowing and all this kind of stuff, and he wanted to be in on it. I mean, those were the economic predictions. So now Obama is going to get to preside over the recovery.
And the Democrats will finally get credit for this, as they would not have before. All right, are we moving on to the Senate?
Yes.
Tammy
Baldwin. Let's put her picture up.
Oh, my God.
There she is.
Tammy Baldwin.
Tammy Baldwin won, of course, the first out gay or lesbian or bisexual person to win a U.S. Senate seat. This is historic.
And she's the first to run as a non-incumbent out person to win a House seat.
Right.
She's done the double now.
Right.
She goes down in history as the first person in both the House and Senate as an out LGBT person to win a seat.
Because the first couple of members of Congress who were out were already elected and then decided to come out later. Gary Studs
forced out.
Gary Studs was forced out, but Barney Frank decided to come out, although I did write about him before he came out.
Well, he was sort of forced out, too.
Well, no, he declared himself.
Jim Colby was kind of forced out.
But he did.
Mark Foley was kind of forced out.
Well, Mark Foley. Anyway.
Others are still not out. Well, here's a perfect symbol of the trajectory. Totally unintentional. Tammy Baldwin replaces in the Senate Herb Kohl from Wisconsin, who is a closeted gay man.
Right, I'd forgotten
and you go
about
from
that.
the closeted gay man to the out lesbian, and it is just the perfect symbol of the trajectory of the whole movement.
And this was a very uphill race. I mean, she was up against Tommy Thompson, one of the most popular governors in the history of Wisconsin.
And former Bush cabinet secretary.
He did what a lot of politicians do when they're out of work. They go become lobbyists and they make a lot of money. And he worked for a lot of scum.
And she pounded him on that.
And she did.
And he's older, and he's old school, and he was the Bush administration, and I think all of that played against him, and she's fresher and younger. And she has been around in Wisconsin for a long time. She started in the state assembly, was there for years. She was then moved up to Congress for 14 years, and now the Senate. So even though she's been running just from Madison, They know her in Wisconsin, and they trust her, and she built her career in the same way that Obama built this win. It was all very strong and solid.
And of course, Tammy has a lot of the same politics as the other biggest thrill of the night for me, which was Elizabeth Warren winning in Massachusetts.
Incredible to beat Scott Brown.
Because these are the people who are focusing on how this nation, and Obama isn't doing it really, how this nation is getting screwed by Wall Street. And if we don't change the economic system of casino capitalism and that kind of stuff, we are going down as a country. And in her speech, she talked about that. And then, of course, she said, now look, I'm well aware that I'm the first woman in Wisconsin to elected to the Senate, and I'm well aware I'm the first openly gay member, but I didn't run to make history. I ran to make a difference. And then she started talking about the differences that she wants to make. But this is a statewide race, and this is Wisconsin, which has a right-wing governor.
Yep.
You know,
Scott Walker.
And had a right-wing legislature.
Yeah, a right-wing governor who survived a recall election.
Yeah. So this says that you can be completely out and affirming. And she comes out. She was a lesbian activist. She wasn't just a lesbian person who happens to be a lesbian. So that was tremendously sweet.
Unbelievable.
And she's a real progressive.
She really is. She's been running on health care reform and universal health care all through her career. So it is overwhelming how great this is that Tammy Baldwin is going to the U.S. Senate. Unbelievable.
And it's
huge, enormous that she has won.
And it's going to be nice having a record, at least I think, 19 women, or maybe 20 now, in the United States Senate, although one of them is the Tea Party nut from Nebraska.
Yeah, well,
that doesn't mean I'm not happy to see Linda McMahon, Republican from Connecticut, spend $100 million on 2 Senate races and lose both of them. She beat a guy named Chris Murphy. Chris, I don't even know.
No, she lost to Chris Murphy.
She lost to Chris Murphy. I don't know much about Chris Murphy.
Well, he's a good progressive Democratic congressman who moved up to Senate. Well, here I want to run through these Senate races. I'm sorry Rich Carmona lost in Arizona. He looked like he might win, but he didn't. Dianne Feinstein reelected in California. Chris Murphy over Linda McMahon, fantastic. Delaware, Tom Carper gets reelected. That's great. Bill Nelson wins in Florida. That's great. Linda Lingle, right-wing, closeted lesbian in Hawaii, Republican, former governor, goes down to defeat.
Wow.
She's the one we talked about last week who invited everyone in to watch her veto the civil unions bill.
Right.
She goes down.
And of course, the 2 Republican rape senators or candidates lost. And that's
Murdoch to Joe Donnelly in Indiana, fantastic.
And Claire McCaskill beat Todd Akin in Missouri.
Angus King is a big win in Maine. He's going to be our friend. Debbie Stabenow gets reelected. Amy Klobuchar gets reelected. McCaskill. John Tester has pulled it out in Montana. Fantastic. Sorry to see Shelley Berkeley lose in Nevada.
Yeah.
That was fairly close.
She had some she is under investigation.
Yeah, but she's a terrific person. Menendez reelected in New Jersey. The Democrat wins in New Mexico, defeating Heather Wilson, the right-wing nut.
And our friend Kirsten Gillibrand won big in New York over Wendy Long, who was a virulently anti-gay. She was asked if she would even go to a gay wedding, and she said no.
And the woman I call Heidi What's-Her-Name in North Dakota, Heidi Heitkamp, Democrat, pulled out that win. That is fantastic. We picked up 2 seats in the U.S. Senate. Sherrod Brown reelected, Sheldon Whitehouse, Bob Casey. We are going to have to
Bob Casey, the pro-life Democrat.
Well, we're going to have to deal with the idiot Ted Cruz from Texas, who has replaced Murdoch as the one who now says, I'll compromise as long as they agree with everything I say.
Yeah.
We got Bernie Sanders back in Vermont, Maria Cantwell, Tim Kaine winning in Virginia. That's huge.
Terrific, by about 4 or 5 points.
Yeah, so really, as all these races played out in the Senate, we won about 90% of what we hoped we would win, and it's just fantastic.
And let's talk about the House race. Even though we're not in control of the House, the Democrats aren't anyway, we're going to well, there were 4 members of the House who were gay. One of them was Tammy Baldwin. She's moved on to the Senate.
And Barney Frank retired.
Yes. So there are now going to be at least 6. Well, maybe. Well, there's some.
No, 5. 6. You're right.
LGBT.
6.
If you LGB.
Polis and Ciccolini.
The Rhode Island.
Ciccolini.
David Ciccolini was the mayor of Providence. He did a first term in the House, plagued by problems from his mayoralty. But he's still going to represent my right-wing brothers in Rhode Island. And
Reelected.
That's going to make Thanksgiving nicer.
Jared Polis reelected in Colorado. Mark Takano, first out person of color, Asian American, elected to the U.S. House from a district in California. That's a big win. Mark Pocan in Wisconsin, elected in Tammy Baldwin's House district.
Easily.
To replace her.
And in New York State, the first out gay congressman, Sean Patrick Maloney, beat a first-termer, Nan Hayworth.
Who was a Tea Partier.
Well, who has a
gay son.
Gay child, yes. And Sean Patrick Maloney has won.
And it looks like Kirsten Sinema, out bisexual, may win the House seat in Arizona.
How about that?
They're waiting for absentee ballots and provisional ballots, but she has a slim lead that we hope she will hold on to.
Now, one out gay candidate who was in a close race was a Republican, Tisei. How do you say it?
Tisei, we don't know.
Tisei. We got 10 emails from him a day, but he lost to the John Tierney, who is under all these investigations. But it was a Democratic year up there in Massachusetts, especially. So he lost. He was trying to be one of the last of the moderate Republicans.
Yep.
Now, beyond the House, or you want to talk more about the House?
Iowa.
Yes.
Big fight over these Supreme Court justices. 2 years ago, right after the Supreme Court of Iowa had legalized same-sex marriage, they have these retention votes in Iowa for the Supreme Court justices.
And the Iowa
7 members.
Yes, and the Iowa Supreme Court had voted unanimously for same-sex marriage. So they got rid of 3 of them in this one shot, and a lot of money was put in there by people by these Republican candidates like Newt Gingrich, who wanted to run in Iowa. This is how they showed how much they hated us.
So one of them was up for retention this time.
David Wiggins.
And he won.
Yes.
He won. We turned it around. We held on to David Wiggins. That is fantastic.
That's a breakthrough.
And the other great thing is the leader of the Senate in Iowa, Mike Gronstal, had stood up alone to block a repeal of marriage rights in Iowa, and they went after him like crazy too with millions of dollars, and he won, and the Democrats won the Senate in Iowa. This is huge.
And all of this, and we're going to get to the referenda, is a rebuke to the National Organization for Marriage, because that was one of their main targets, and they were bragging that they were going to kill it off in Iowa easily, and they did not.
Let's just go through a few other little...
Well, in San Diego, there's a Republican conservative named Carl DeMeo who is openly gay, and he was right-wing and not necessarily too pro-gay.
Opposed by most of the gay community in San Diego.
He lost narrowly to a Democratic liberal named Bob Filner, and that's where the organizational support went. And that's a sign of maturity. Look, we're not just going to support somebody because they're gay. I mean, this is what I hope, and I hope, as we make all this progress, that we don't lose sight of where we were and what we suffered through, and we don't forget other people who are still suffering, and that we always vote more progressively for the rest of our lives. But I fear, as we make progress, that will not happen.
Well, which is not to say that we don't want both parties to come around to our point of view and our values.
Well, sure.
And for those who are still working within the Republican Party for a change in values, we're all for that, or I am anyway.
But the Republican Party is going in the other direction.
They are, and they have given no sign anywhere of working for not only our advancement, but any progressive values at all.
My friend Anthony Halbut pointed out to me in one of our many nervous conversations during the election, that the Democratic Party in America is equivalent to the conservative parties in Europe. And most of the conservative parties in Europe are fairly decently pro-gay, or they don't care, or they've modernized in that sense. But
we'll get to some
the Republican Party
in
this country is becoming a fascist party.
Victory Fund says that of the 180 candidates they endorsed across the country in all sorts of races, 118 of them so far have won.
Among them, the first out gay legislator in West Virginia, Stephen Skinner.
And several in Florida.
Two, Joe Saunders and David Richardson.
And maybe one more from Key West.
That would be nice.
And
if we can't win Key West.
And the one elected out gay Republican we know is a member of the legislature now in Ohio. We're also very happy about the Democrat winning the governorship in New Hampshire, because that protects same-sex marriage in New Hampshire, because they elected a crazy Republican legislature a couple of years ago, which suddenly started thinking they might repeal marriage equality. And the then Democratic governor said, yeah, just try it. I will veto that, and you're going down. But he is no longer there, so they had a new race, and the Democrat Maggie Hassan won.
New Hampshire, all statewide officials, women.
Yeah.
No, they're not all Democrats.
Mary Bono Mack, who many gay Republicans regard as a friend, but who actually was more conservative than we would like, has gone down to defeat in California to a Democrat. And our friend and viewer, Drew Herzig, in Astoria, Oregon, has won a city council race there.
Yes.
As
congratulations, Drew.
Sort of a revolutionary. And in both Oregon and Colorado, the Democrats are taking over the House in those states and are going to have gay speakers of the House. A man in Colorado and a lesbian in Oregon is going to be the Speaker of the House.
We are taking over the gay USA. You got it? So keep in line, everybody out there.
But some people
will think taking over.
Some people will think we buried the lead, which is the marriage referendum.
Well, absolutely. This is a turning point in history, which we are getting to in 35 minutes into the show. Absolute turning point in history. We lost 32, 33 of these referenda on same-sex marriage. The asterisk is in Arizona. They once put same-sex marriage and domestic partnership on the ballot, and we won when they tried to kill that off in a constitutional
Well, because it included
domestic partnership
for heterosexual seniors.
Well, heterosexual seniors were led to believe that you'd lose something too, and they got nervous and they voted against it.
But then they took them out of it and voted again, and we lost.
Well, they did on marriage. So so this is historic. We think we won all four of these.
Yes.
In Maryland and in Washington State, the legislatures had passed same-sex marriage, and then the right wing immediately put it on the
governors had signed it.
Yeah, but it couldn't go into effect because the right wing collected enough signatures to stop it from going into effect until the people had their say. Well, for the first time, the people had their say, and they said yes to us.
Unbelievable.
A lot of hard work, a lot of money. We outspent them heavily in these races.
This looked so bad at the beginning in Maryland that Freedom to Marry didn't even want to be involved in the election because they said there's not enough organization, there's not enough groundwork, where this is no good. They came in eventually, and everybody pulled really hard, and Obama came out for marriage equality, and everybody got on board. Religious leaders, political leaders.
African-American leaders in Maryland especially.
NAACP. And the governor just went completely
all out,
all in. O'Malley, incredible, and tweeted today, the day after the election, to kids of gay parents or straight parents, it doesn't matter. All your parents are equal now.
Right. And again, but then there's the vote in Minnesota, and
we don't have the official final count in Washington,
right?
Because that's mail-in ballots, so we only.
In Minnesota, they've already got a law against same-sex marriage. You can't get married there, but they had not passed a constitutional amendment against it. So for the first time, other than the Arizona asterisk, we defeated a state constitutional amendment against same-sex marriage.
Amazing.
And that is sweet. That doesn't mean you still can't get married in Minnesota. Now,
but that's huge. So 3 years ago in Maine, the legislature had passed marriage equality, and the governor had signed it, but the right wing put a ballot referendum together, and we lost. Marriage was not allowed to go through. And there's a new film out, Question 1, about that that's quite interesting. I saw that. But our side, after that, 3 years ago, said, you know what? We're not giving up. We're going to keep trying this. And they went back to the ballot this year, and everybody said, what the hell are you doing? You know, we've never assertively put a freestanding ballot measure there with no, legislature, court, anything, just going ahead and asking everybody to vote for marriage.
But check me on this. Didn't Maine do that about a statewide gay rights law?
Yes, and they went back and forth on that for
several
years.
times.
Yeah. But marriage has never, ever had this kind of vote in a state, and we won. It's unbelievable because they figured they did 250,000 face-to-face conversations in Maine, 20% of the residents of the state.
Well, I mean, and that's the way the Obama campaign worked as well. It's not just calling people up blindly. It's identifying people. It's talking to people. It's asking how you are and getting, talking about the weather a little bit before you get into it.
Talking for half an hour instead of a 30-second phone call.
It's hard work.
Yeah. So I did a little calculation, and we now have 9 states, assuming this all keeps playing out the way we believe. And
9 states where you can get married. They are
plus the District of Columbia,
Connecticut, Iowa, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York. Oh, New York, I could get married. Vermont and Washington State, and then, of course, Washington, D.C. And as our friend Rex Wachner points out, there are now the countries where you can get married are Argentina, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, Iceland, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, South Africa, Spain, Sweden, and Mexico, where same-sex marriages are allowed only in the capital city, but are recognized everywhere.
So by my calculations, which are very rough, I looked up a Census Bureau chart today. Marriage equality, same-sex marriage, is now legal or about to be in states and the district that cover 18% of the U.S. population. And that's without California or Illinois, where civil unions or stuff are legal. When you look at just the civil union and extensive domestic partnership states, that's another 26%. So we are close to half of the country having extensive civil unions, New Jersey available, and marriage.
And of course, the next step in this is the Supreme Court, which is imminent. I talked to my friend Douglas Jennings, who young guy's about 25 now, but as a student, he worked on the Prop 8 against Prop 8 in California,
which was only 4 years ago.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. He went out there. He moved out there from Utah, and he threw himself into the campaign, and it was heartbreaking to lose that. 4 years later. Now this was California.
Yep.
These states are not necessarily. Some of them are not as liberal as California. And everybody, the country has turned around. And I think you have to give Obama a lot of credit for that.
Absolutely.
For coming out for it and validating it for a lot of people.
Then I guess we have to give Joe Biden credit, too.
Absolutely, because he got the ball rolling.
Now,
and we're going to
footnote.
Yeah, go ahead.
Footnote, the New York Times, which does this periodically, had a column in the business section about gay couples tax planning in the wake of the Edie Windsor decision in the Second Circuit?
Yeah.
Court of Appeals. And they said, this was a case about estate taxes and saying that the Defense of Marriage Act was unconstitutional in Section 3 and that legally married same-sex couples should have the same estate rights as heterosexual couples. And they said, if this all stands up and DOMA Section 3 is overturned, all you couples who are married should be looking at your tax returns, and you should be filing a protective refund claim with the IRS in the event the Supreme Court overturns the law. You should be senior accountant. There's a 3-year statute of limitations on this. It applies to income taxes, estate taxes, gift taxes, and it may apply not only to marriages, but to civil unions, which may be treated the same. And this has implications across the board, and you should all go see your accountants and check out your tax situations in the event DOMA Section 3 is overturned.
Now, what did the National Organization for Marriage have to say about all these losses? Well, Maggie Gallagher...
We're not giving up.
Maggie Gallagher, one of their leaders, said last night, meaning the election was a big loss, there's no way to spin it, but she said, she said, we lost because the real America didn't vote. The Obama electorate voted.
Is that the Muslim America, the Kenyan America?
The Latinos and the gays and the women, those people, the Obama electorate, they showed up.
She should get together with Donald Trump.
And we have to figure out how to win a much larger share of the Latino vote, or the conservative movement could be over.
Well, you have Marco Rubio, who could be a Republican candidate in the near future, who is making robocalls against same-sex marriage that were being run in those states with the referenda. You have Ted Cruz being elected senator in Texas as a Republican Latino. This could be the way the Republicans go, and that could be scary. So watch out for that.
By the way, one of the things that happened in New York, where we live, is that surprisingly, it looks like the state Senate might turn Democrat again, except New York is such a mess that there are all these rogue Democrats who may caucus with Republicans. That's what's so disgraceful about politics in the state.
Worst legislature.
And our governor, Andrew Cuomo, who we love for getting the marriage bill passed, has encouraged this. And he must be criticized for it.
Yeah, Grisanti won. He's the Republican who voted for marriage, but Steve Salland looks like he's lost.
Steve Salland cast a very courageous vote as a Republican, but he had not just a Democratic opponent, but he had a conservative opponent who lost the primary to him and drew enough votes away that it looks like he's going to lose his seat, which means 3 of the 4 Republicans who voted for same-sex marriage are out. And our side said we were going to protect them. We had to protect them. We had to show that nobody loses their seat because of a vote for same-sex marriage. No, sometimes you take a courageous vote and you pay a price, and it's worth it. Then
change parties.
Yeah, change parties. Now, prior to the election, there were stories coming in that were kind of appalling, like there was a right-wing Tea Party organization called True the Vote. These people were going around trying to intimidate people from voting, acting like we're falsifying ballots and things like that. And one of the things they did was watch out for those transgenders, especially because, they make sure that they line up with their IDs and their names and all this kind of stuff. It was just outrageous.
But on the other side, there was a Catholic priest in Maryland who got up in his church, read the letter from the bishop against marriage, and then gave his own little speech about, I don't agree with this. I think there should be civil marriage for same-sex couples. We're waiting.
He's toast. He was very courageous. I want to give you his name, because his name was Reverend Richard T. Lawrence, and he spoke up in his parish church of St. Vincent de Paul there in Baltimore. And he's been active in social justice issues for a long time. And he said, after he said his position, he said, so there you have it, the official teaching of the church and my personal reflections. And here's what happened. Standing ovation from the congregation. Catholics, it shows you, if you stand up on this issue, that you have other people around you who would support you. I wish individual Catholics in the pews, when they read this letter from Archbishop Lori, L-O-R-I, that somebody in the parish had just stood up and said, the Archbishop doesn't speak for me. And you might have gotten a standing ovation and turned this thing around. Well, we won in Maryland anyway.
It's shocking how much people are unwilling to stand up and be counted. On the other hand, there are heroes everywhere who have.
And congratulations to Larry Chanin. He got married to John Burkhalter, their longtime partners. And Larry is one of the mainstays of gay philanthropy and service and all that kind of stuff. A great guy.
All right, are we finished with the election for the moment?
Well, yeah, I think so.
All right.
Oh, although I do want to take issue with something that somebody I don't get along with, Richard Socarides, said about Tammy Baldwin, because when there was a sort of a feature piece about Tammy, and he said, he emphasized that her potential election had nothing to do with her being gay, and the fact is, one of the reasons that she's in public life, and one of the reasons we do what we do, and a lot of people get into public life, is because our sexuality puts us out of the mainstream, teaches us about human suffering and all that other kind of stuff, and that is the reason that we get into it.
Some of it
it's integral. It's not incidental.
Plus, and more of the electorate sees it as a plus, which is the bottom line lesson of this election,
Right.
which is the point we've been making for the last 45 minutes.
Right.
All right, other stories.
Okay. Well, we got a very nice study on lesbian mothers. They study
This is an ongoing study, and this is just the latest.
26-year study.
Yes, the latest data extracted from the
It's
study.
called Adolescents with Lesbian Mothers Describe Their Own Lives.
It's the Nanette Gatrell study.
And it found that 17-year-olds who have lesbian mothers had high school GPAs ranging from A- to B+, while having strong family bonds with their mothers, whom
They're happier.
the teens consider good role models.
Yeah.
And it just is very encouraging. And
Yeah.
it's the kind of stuff we need in court, and maybe the Supreme Court will take into consideration when it decides all these marriage cases.
International news.
Sure.
Not looking so great in France, where the socialist government is running into a little opposition on their plan to introduce marriage.
So the Catholic Church, which everybody's Catholic in France, not everybody, of course, but it's a predominantly Catholic country, but nominally, because nobody goes to church.
Right.
But all of a sudden, maybe we want to be Catholic on this marriage thing. So that's the excuse people are using.
I think it's actually a nom kind of thing. It's a small but vocal minority who are now standing up and screaming and yelling. I think
people are uncomfortable with homosexuality and with same-sex marriage, so they need something rational other than as you would often point out, disgusted by it,
Yeah.
as people feel. So they say, well, it's against God, it's against religion, da-da-da-da-da-da. But this week, the French cabinet did approve the same-sex marriage bill, and they're going to be sending it on.
but they're delaying it a little, aren't they?
a little bit, but they
Yeah.
they did it this
Yeah,
week.
I think it is a vocal minority that is delaying it. Meanwhile, in Spain, 7 years after they legalized marriage equality, the Constitutional Court has finally heard the objection to it from the right wing and decided it is constitutional to have marriage equality in Spain.
By an 8-3 vote, but here's what I don't understand. The suit was brought by the conservative Popular Party, it's called.
Yes.
That's the name of it. They're in power now. Why don't they
Exactly.
just get rid of it?
Well, maybe that's a complicated process. Or maybe they were waiting for this decision.
Well, I don't
and
want
they'll
you to
do
get rid of
something
it.
Else.
We want Spain to stay in the plus column.
In Malawi, in Africa, the parliament there is taking a look at their anti-gay laws, and the president or president has announced that they are going to suspend enforcement of the anti-gay laws and suspend arrests of gay people while the parliament considers
It was
this.
actually the Justice Minister, Ralph Kasambara, and what he said
as
was...
a representative of the
What
government.
he said was, if we continue arresting and prosecuting people based on the said laws, and later such laws are found to be unconstitutional, it would be an embarrassment to the government. Wait for it. It is better to let one criminal get away with it rather than throw a lot of innocent people in jail. Because it's not like people...
I'm moving to Malawi.
It's not like people are coming out every day in Malawi because they see what happens when you do.
I just think that's a more enlightened statement than we get from most governments in this country.
And we're not getting enlightenment from Egypt, where the police raided beach chalets in the town of El Arish, Sinai, arrested a man who they alleged to head a gay sex network. It's one of these gay crackdowns, and it's coming from the new government, which is, of course, the Muslim Brotherhood. And of course, when the Mubarak government in the past used to crack down on gays, it was at the behest of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yes.
So it's really sad to see that happening.
Well, I have a question for you.
Yes.
There was some debate last night on MSNBC, which is what I watch these days, about Obama's speech. Chris Matthews got all irate and said it should have been more political. He should have thanked Bill Clinton. He should have been more aggressive about asserting his agenda. He should have claimed victory more on values. And a lot of people fought back on that on the panel and said, oh, please give me a break. This is, he's trying to be the president of everybody. There's time enough for that, whatever. And I found myself torn because on the one hand, I saw that Obama was trying to do his thing, but that it really was some of what we've been disappointed in the last 4 years, that he hasn't been aggressive enough about asserting a value system. But on the other hand, I appreciated that he
ran mostly on not being Mitt Romney.
Yes.
He spent most of his money on negative ads against Romney, and Romney is a horror show. And we couldn't let that happen.
Yes.
But it would have been nice if he campaigned on some big idea or issue or something. I mean, to hear him in the debate go, well, Governor Romney and I basically agree on Social Security. What?
Well, this is the question. Will he now, in his second term, get more aggressive, or is he still going to do this stuff?
You've said that he does rope-a-dope sometimes.
Yeah, but I too, look, I understand the desire to reach out and effect compromise, and I think he did more of that than he's given credit for. And I think he is obstructed in ways he can't get around. He cannot talk people into agreeing with him. It's got to be more of a Lyndon Johnson arm-twisting approach.
I fear that the next time that he's going to have to take bold action is when the economy, when some big bank fails again.
Well, I want more stimulus.
But
I want an infrastructure
You're not
program.
getting any stimulus out of the Republican Congress. You're not getting it. You're not getting it.
Well, maybe Chris Christie will go down there and say, "Are you kidding me?"
Chris Christie must have become a Democrat at this point. Of course, here's the guy who gave
Romney.
He's the guy who gave the keynote speech for Romney, who attacked the president a week ago, and then the storm hits and they become best friends. But they
became best friends because he put Springsteen on the phone with him.
No, but you know why they're saying that he did it? Because they're saying he's still chafing from not being named to be the running mate.
Well, look, when you are the governor of a state and your state is a disaster area, you better be sucking up to the president who's going to give you the federal aid. You have no choice there. We still need a public works infrastructure stimulus in this country, and that should be for the economy.
Did anybody talk about it in the campaign?
No, and that has got to be the priority in this country.
You have been watching Rachel Maddow. That's her thing.
Please,
Rachel and I.
I don't watch her much.
Right.
Anyway.
And Peter, our old friend Peter Tatchell needs to watch himself. This was he's a gay activist, but he was going after the president of Indonesia, throwing himself in front of the car again, and then they beat him up and tied him up and all this other kind of stuff again. Take it easy a little, Peter. But you're standing up for the right thing.
All right, AIDS and health news.
Yes.
In LA County, the ballot referendum to require all porn movies to have actors use condoms passed, and that's very controversial, and everybody in LA is afraid this will now drive all that business elsewhere.
And there was this big feature story about how in the porn industry, people actually have to hold up on their phones their latest results from HIV within the last few days and all this kind of stuff, and they claim that they've eliminated the passing of the infection. I don't know.
Well, I think that's part of the strategy, but if you used condoms, you would eliminate not only HIV transmission, but other sexually transmitted diseases. And,
there's not many condoms being used in porn today.
Well, no.
I don't know how I know that.
Yeah. New study out of I think it's the Archives of Internal Medicine, published at AIDSmap.com. I should have given this Chiron on to our associate producer, Bill Bowman, AIDSmap.com, which shows really shocking figures of how mortality rates have declined over the years for affluent white men and women with HIV, and skyrocketed for people of color with HIV, particularly those with less education. And the mortality rates are like 7 times worse among black men and women than for white men and women.
That's terrible.
It is terrible.
It's terrible. I mean, that doesn't mean that they have no access to drugs and that there's some of them aren't getting it. It's better than it was in 1995.
I hope so, but the disparity is
it's terrible.
Shocking.
It's terrible.
Shocking.
It's terrible. Well, come on. It's health disparities all on everything.
Absolutely. In San Francisco, the Health Commission there has decided that the health program in San Francisco Healthy, or Healthy San Francisco, will now cover transgender health needs, which it had not before, so that's good news.
And we won some medical marijuana things around the country.
We did, and I'm concerned that the demotion of Jenna Wolfe on NBC on the Weekend Today show from co-anchor to news anchor is a little homophobic, a little too butch.
Anderson Cooper losing his talk show. You know, what's happening
We're winning
here?
politically, but not on TV.
But we had a good survey from GLAAD that says we got all these characters on television now.
And that they're making a difference in people's opinions. Now that, well, look.
Well, Gay USA has 2 gay characters on it. And that's
sort of. They're so old, though. Well, no, this is what they claim now, that seeing these openly LGBT characters is making a difference in people's opinions. I think it's a factor, but knowing people in person, friends and family and coworkers,
where you go,
makes a but.
You're nothing like those gay characters on television. You just seem kind of, like
boring.
A regular person.
Boring. Some kid in a school where I was doing a talk once said, what's the gay lifestyle? I said, the gay lifestyle is I go to work, I go home, I have dinner, I watch TV, I go to bed. He says, oh, that's so boring. Yes, the gay lifestyle.
Wow.
Anyway, I'll
exhausted.
speak for myself. Exhausted but exhilarated.
Yes.
I just couldn't believe how many things broke our way in this election. I was prepared. I thought Obama would probably eke it out. I had some moments of doubt, but I thought, it's probably.
Now you're really going to believe Nate Silver in the future.
He was unbelievable.
50 states.
I have cast aspersions on polling, but
He's not polling. He's scientific analysis of polling. And he was 100% right.
They're getting better at it.
Well, he's good.
They've improved over the years. Yeah. Well, I'm happy, and I'm, I cannot emphasize enough how much the re-election of Barack Obama, the election of Tammy Baldwin, and the wins in these marriage referendums are a sea change in the electorate, and it makes me think that we are now on a trajectory that is extremely positive.
And if you want to know how to accomplish the rest of it, you're going to have to roll back the tape to my lecture about controlling your state legislature and your governor and the House of Representatives.
Well, Obama won because they never gave up, and they never stopped campaigning, and they never stopped thinking about it, and that's what we have to do, too.
And don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Oh, that's Clinton.
And Tammy Baldwin did Prince, Let's Go Crazy at the
Let's all
victory
take a rest,
celebration.
and we'll see you next week.
We will. Bye.